Today's Tanya for the 15th of Teves is in chapter 12, Perek Yud Beis. It's on page 32. The number at the bottom of the page is 48. We are 3 lines. The Alter Rebbe is describing a Beinani, and he's saying that a Beinani is a person who in action and speech and thought, in other words, in behavior, he is exclusively godly. He will not sin in any of the 3 garments, thought, speech, or deed, because of his total acceptance of the yoke of heaven. He has completely devoted himself, actually given himself away to God's will, and therefore God's will carries more weight in him than his own will. He will therefore not sin. He's not available to sin. But that's true only in the garments of the soul, in thought, speech, and deed. However, in terms of his innate feelings, of his appetites, and of his frame of mind, he understands the physical pleasure, and he senses the physical pleasure, even though he will not indulge in thought, speech, or deed. 3 lines from the bottom. During the time of davening, the Beinani feels like a tzaddik, because he is so much focused on godliness that even in his heart and mind he senses only the pleasure of godliness. After the davening, the animal soul returns and once again senses the pleasure in the physical world. Animal soul does not have exclusive in the body. It is therefore not able to exercise its desire, to express it in thought, speech, or deed. To be able to clothe its desires in the limbs of the body, in thought, speech, or deed, that the animal soul can't do. So even when it desires the physical, even when it sees the pleasure in the physical, it cannot act on it in thought, speech, or deed, because in the Beinani they are exclusively godly. Even in thought, he cannot pursue. He can't get the person, the animal soul, can't get the person to pursue the thought. How to go about fulfilling this desire, because the mind controls the heart, rules over the heart. Now this condition, the mind ruling over the heart, which means that even though a person has a desire for something, he is fully capable of denying that desire, which is the meaning of the mind ruling the heart. This ability or this relationship between mind and heart is a natural condition. This is so by the very nature of mind and heart, by the way that they are formed and created. This is how a person is formed at birth. That every person is capable, by virtue of his will, in the mind, to control and to rule over the instincts or the desires of the heart, to not further the desire of the heart either in thought, speech, or deed. And he is capable by nature of removing the thought from his mind completely and doing the exact opposite of what the desire requests, what the desire demands. So it is perfectly natural for a human being to have a desire and yet do the exact opposite and remove the thought of the desire from his mind completely. It is perfectly healthy and natural to completely reject and deny an impulse of a heart. And that's what makes us human beings, in that we have various impulses and we can reject some in favor of others, even if they're opposites. And particularly in rejecting an unholy thought in favor of a holy thought, as it says, "V'ra'isi sheyesh yisrin l'chachma min asichlus ki yisrin min acheshech." Shlomo HaMelech says, "I have seen that there's an advantage to wisdom over foolishness, like the advantage of light over darkness." What does this mean? Just as light is not only preferred, is better than darkness, but light has a power over the darkness, in that a little bit of light displaces a lot of darkness. A little bit of physical light displaces a lot of darkness. And secondly, in displacing the darkness, there is no struggle. The light doesn't force the darkness to leave. The darkness leaves or is displaced instantaneously and effortlessly. That's the power that light has over darkness, in that a little bit can displace a lot, and that displacement takes place effortlessly. So Shlomo HaMelech says, in the same way that light completely governs the darkness, wisdom completely governs the foolishness. Wisdom means the godly soul, foolishness means the animal soul. So a lot of foolishness coming from the klip and sitra achra, that is in the left side of the heart, is removed by a little bit of wisdom. Where do we see that the klip is called foolish? The Gemara says a person doesn't sin unless he's overcome by a spirit of foolishness. So we see that klippa is foolishness. And this is all displaced, mipnei hachachma, it is displaced by the wisdom, shebenefesh olikis, which is in the godly soul, shebemeyach, that rests in the mind. Asher etzeino, whose desire it is, limshe levado be'ir, to rule alone in the body, in the city, which is the body, and it wants to clothe itself, its three garments, in the body, in the entire body, which are the thought, speech, and deed of the 613 mitzvahs of Torah, as mentioned before. So the wisdom of the godly soul, meaning the mind, rules over the heart. The foolishness of the animal soul, the godly soul's seat in the body is in the mind, the animal soul's seat is in the heart, and therefore the mind ruling the heart means godliness rules over klippa, over unholiness, like light rules over darkness. And therefore, by the force of the wisdom of the godly soul, the foolishness of the animal soul is effortlessly removed and displaced, just as light effortlessly displaces darkness. So primarily, in terms of holy and unholy, but not exclusively, in all areas, a person has the power of the mind to control the heart, so that whatever he desires, his mind still has to agree or disagree. That's what a human being is. If his mind disagrees, then the desire is dismissed. If the mind approves, then the desire is pursued. So that's true in all matters, even if it's a choice between two unholy pleasures. You have to pick one. But it is more so, it's even truer, that the mind controls the heart when you're talking about a choice, a decision that you have to make between a holy option and the unholy option. Here, the holiness of the godly soul displaces the desires or the impulses of the animal soul effortlessly, like light displaces darkness. In the Hayom Yom for the 15th of Teves, the Rebbe writes that in Torah Divrei HaMaschal Esrei, in the Seif that begins Vihine Zehu, instead of what is written there, the correction has to be made. It should read V'halos nitzutze shenoflu afilu habahames yisalu kamei shehaya b'tchilas. Prepare yourself to hear, Israel. Get ready and hear. this time in which we live is the appointed time for the redemption through Mashiach Tzidkenu. The suffering that has come upon us are the birth pangs of Mashiach. And we will not be redeemed other than through tshuva. Do not believe the false prophets that promise you salvation and consolation after the end of the war. Remember the word of God. Cursed is the man who trusts in man and places his hope in the flesh of the arm. And as a result, from God, his heart turns away. Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elikecha. We are called on to do tshuva and to return to God. And prepare yourself and your children to receive the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu b'korev mamash.